School may finish, but learning doesn't. Life will continue to test you, no matter what age you are. And for that, you need a strong mindset to make the struggle with life work with you and not against you. This podcast is dedicated to using old head wisdom to explore what it means to be mentally strong, what it means to be successful, and how to get between tough times. We are Ricky and Keith Tillman. Thank you for watching today. Okay, welcome to Old Head Podcast. We're speaking with Malik and Keith Tillman. Today we're going to be talking about courage. And Malik is my son, so we're going to have a conversation about courage. Okay, Malik, go for it. What is your idea of courage, and how's it made an impact in your life?
Yeah, well, for me, even though I am still young, in my growth from where I was before to where I am now, it seems that there's two things mainly that I can attribute to being grown up: responsibility and courage. And because when you're a child, I find that it's easy to dodge responsibility and it's easy to run away from things that are terrifying. So growing up for me is just, maybe over the past 5 years, it's just been me learning that I need to confront fears and I need to take responsibility. Every time, every issue that pops up, it's in the form of one of those two things. Whether it be some endeavor that I'm taking on, an issue will always come up in the form of me not taking responsibility or me being fearful of an outcome. And with regards to courage, that lesson has been that you have to escape the bubble of safety, in the sense that you have to confront the worst possible reality that could come about for what you choose to do. So for me, or for anyone, if it's starting a business or whatever it may be, you have to accept the full spectrum of possibilities. Or it's whether it's going into the workforce. And what will happen is, if you don't do that, which is what I've found over, say, my growth period, is that every time that I opt out of a tough decision, I will use the fact that it's a smart decision to do so in order to hide my fears. So if I was scared of doing something, I would justify it and say, well, the smart thing to do is to pick the safe option. And any time I picked a safe option, it was always a step in the direction away from what I wanted. So for example, whether it mean that I needed to, in order to, if I want to start my own business and so on, all the parts are there. And I'm currently at this job that I don't really like. What I need to do is I need to dive deep into my business or what I want to do, put all in and not play a half game. But what my mind will do is, because I'm fearful of that, because lots can go wrong, you could end up with no money, you could end up God knows where. What my mind will do is say, well, the safe thing to do is to actually just keep your job that you're in now and then earn more money and save more money. And then when you're ready, then you do that. That's what my mind kept saying. And there's virtue in that. And it's not that you ignore sensible decision making. But I found that I was always not taking the leap. I was always avoiding going into uncertain and risky territory and justifying it with making a safe decision. So what I've learned, to put it all together, is that what really makes or breaks you is how willing you are to make really risky decisions and stick by them. But someone who isn't willing to do that is always going to be, the knee's always going to be shaking in fear as to what's going to happen next. And then they'll pick the next option, the safe option. Like I have friends who they won't do certain things, so they'll stick with the safe thing. They'll study in a degree that they don't like, for a job that they're probably not going to want to do, because the thought of doing anything other than what is concretely certain is too terrifying them to do, for them to take on. And so for me, growing up is about um, looking at what is terrifying and what I would call, when there's, a type of suffering that you might incur, instead of running from it, you shake its hand, and you don't say that that suffering isn't going to happen. You say that that suffering might happen. Where, let's say, in a case of a business, it could not work out, and I'll lose a lot of money, and then my living situation is not good for a few months. That could happen. And instead of me running from that and being like, well, I don't want that to happen at all, I'm going to pick the safe option. It's, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to understand the consequences. And I'm not going to run from that if it happens. I'm just going to say, yeah, that happened. And that is, to me, the fundamental difference between me being immature and, not immature in a bad sense, but just less mature, and me growing up. And I'm not, maybe I'm not all the way there. I'm definitely not all the way there. It's but that feels like the direction in which it's going. I'm becoming more and more fearless and more responsible for my own action. So that's my monologue on courage.
Okay, well, that's really encouraging to hear. That that philosophy that you have, that you're not you're learning not to be fearful, putting things in front of you that's going to get in your way. See, when you are coming up in life and you taking on the challenges of life, you have to really learn to study and become who you want to become. You have to learn to study harder and on yourself, or work harder on yourself, as I said before, work hard on yourself than you do on the job. And when you learn to work hard on yourself, you start to develop a lot more skills and build your values up. So that increases your your chances of understanding what's important to you, what matters to you, and what would happen if you do fail in life. What's the worst thing can happen? So you get a better understanding that what's the worst thing can happen when you're trying to pursue your dreams or trying to be an entrepreneur. What's the worst thing can happen? Well, the worst thing, in my opinion, is that you fail at it, or you're no good at it. But if it doesn't kill you, or then you can recover from that. And the main thing about that is that everything you fail at, it teaches you, you grow and you become better. So to have the courage, and you have to work on, no one's born with all this courage. You work on it and you become more courageous. And as you get, as you say, more mature, you learn to, um, you get tools in your bag so you can handle all these fears that are coming at you. So in your case, where you would stack the deck and try to tick off all the boxes before you make a move, then you're sort of wasting time on becoming who you want to become, because you want to make sure that everything's perfect before you move. And that's just a fear thing. So as you get better at understanding that, hey, it doesn't matter if it doesn't quite work out, as long as I get in the game and start working at it, I'll learn as I go. And that's something that takes time to have the courage to say, you know what, I'm gonna get into traffic, even though I don't quite know how to drive properly, because then something bad could happen. So your instinct is saying, hey, don't do that. Make sure you go get all the skills and learn all the rules of the road before you get into traffic. So you have to sort of go against that and say, no, get into traffic and learn as you go when it comes to building your business or developing in the world. You got to get in the game and then go and learn as you go, as opposed to
Used
stand on
to
the sideline watching the traffic pass you by and trying to make sure you write down all the notes so you can be successful in life.
yeah,
Because that's a bit of a waste. You can waste a lot of time. So
yeah. You used to see that in me, though, didn't you? With the whole preparation, um, planning, overthinking, and so on.
yes, I used to see it in you quite a bit where I would use the word you're procrastinating, and you didn't like that because I can see things in you as well as you can see things in me. I might not be able to see certain things where I procrastinate. I think I'm being using a bit of common sense or applying what my philosophy tell me, and but
Mm,
I can see things in you where you're thinking you're checking off all the boxes. You're taking a safe route of using your brain and being smart and you're trying to prepare for every step of the before you even start. And it would be for me watching you on the outside. From the outside, it would be sort of frustrating because I know
mm,
that you need to get in that game, and then you'll soon find out all these things that you're preparing for. Some of them is not going to come into play.
yeah.
Some of them you handled it a lot better than you thought you would, and some of them are
Mm.
not as bad as you thought it was.
In
So,
in some areas, I've completely 180'd on that.
mhm,
When it comes to, say, work with, say, my business or whatever it be, it's action, action, action. Like the answer to anything, any issue is action. But in saying action, there's also patience as well. It's not frantic action. It's
mhm,
if there's something that can be done, it can be done now. There's too much gets lost to planning, way too much. And this is something I really try and tell my peers that you can lose so much time to inaction. I know a lot of people in my age bracket who's doing a lot of entrepreneurial type things. I know some people who might be starting some podcasts, starting some shoe company, t-shirt brand, and then some of them are good at being on it, but a lot of them it's just time just flies by. It
mhm.
just flies by so quickly. Like it just goes week after week after week. And then when we talk about, that we're talking about doing something, and then I had to look back at the messages of when they announced that they wanted to do it. It's been 4 months.
Yeah. See, what they are is that people we can become when you're entrepreneurs or when you're trying to have these dreams and aspirations in life. You have to be careful because you become a professional planner.
Mhm,
That's what we become. We start planning things and dreaming, and you're writing down the things that you want to achieve. And so you become professional planners instead of
mhm.
taking it to be an entrepreneur, a good one. You have to be someone who's willing to take action.
Yeah.
So you
And it
have a
gives the
plan together.
illusion of work. It's a good feeling when you've planned something out. It makes you feel like you've done so much
Done
work.
something. You think you're
Yeah.
being productive,
Mhm,
and it's great to be a good planner, but you don't get stuck in the mud of just being a great planner because what's following right behind it is procrastination.
mhm,
And so when you procrastinate as an entrepreneur, you're just spinning in the mud. So
mhm,
you have to be someone who's willing to take actions. Now, what follows taking action? Um, Fear of failing,
mhm,
what ifs.
mhm.
Um, I'm not ready, or we're not
Yeah.
ready. So when are you going to be ready? So you're going to go back to the drawing board and add some more things to the list. I'll be ready when I do this, and do this, or when I have this and that, or when I achieve this and this and that. That's a
And that goes
professional
on forever.
plan.
There's always
Yeah,
something extra to
there's
do.
always
It's like,
something.
yeah, like even people I've worked with in the past, it goes down and down and down to the most tiny, tiny thing. I
Hmm.
think there's a term for it. I'll try and find the term, but I learned it recently. Something bicycle fallacy or something, and it's a known thing amongst people who start endeavors or whatever it might be,
Hmm.
that their mind gets fixated on fixing problems, and these problems become very minuscule. So a lot of time is spent on very little things that
Mhm.
they don't see is actually insignificant, but in their mind is really big and important because they're again scared of failing, and they want to minimize the chances of failing as much as they can.
Yeah.
So it's a, you know, everyone goes through it. Um,
Yeah, we all go through it, and this is the reason why we have this topic is people can recognize we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. We go through the same emotions. Some are higher, some are lower. Some people straight off the gate are great action takers. It's one thing to just run out the gate with no plan, and the other one is to sit at the gate planning to run out the gate. So you
yeah,
got to find that perfect balance. So you can't just be a person that's I'm that ambitious and I'm that optimistic that I'm gonna
mm,
just go and run and do it.
yeah,
No, you got to have a bit of, I say, pessimism to say, what if? So, but then you can't stand there and spin in mud and say, well, this now that I've thought about the what ifs, I have to stay right here and figure out all the what ifs. And then you're just standing there ticking off all the what ifs. You're
mm,
planning and plotting and scheming and
yeah.
strategizing. So you become a professional planner, but you're
I've
not a
thought
perfect
about I
creator.
thought about something. I don't think I've talked to anyone about it, but I actually, what you just mentioned there about how you're, what I'll call incorporating some realism into an idea, because ideas, when you have one, are so grand in your mind that you just have this vision, and when you start to think about how realistic it's going to be, it can be very discouraging, and for some people it just ends there. As soon as they get discouraged at the beginning of their dream, that's it. And for some people, you know, they'll try and work it out. um but when you're thinking of all the things that don't work in a business, this is why I think it comes back to courage, right? Because I have a kind of system that I think about, and it's called prey versus predator mentality, right? And a prey animal is always thinking that the rustling in the bushes is going to be out, is going to be something out to get them. That's the first thing that their mind jumps to, is that anything, they're like an animal in the woods, and any sound that they hear is a threat, or
Mhm.
any issue that comes up is like, oh no, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me? And then the predator mentality is that any rustling in the bushes is an opportunity. It's something to pounce at. It's like, oh, is it food? Is it going to be good? And whenever issues pop up, it only sees issues as obstacles in the ways of what it ultimately wants to get. It doesn't even register that as a victim at all, because
Right.
it's too thinking about the value that it wants to get as opposed to the harm that it's going to take. It was like if a lion eats a gazelle, you know, gazelle has horns, it can get injured, but the lion isn't thinking, oh, that gazelle over there has its long horns and it might stab me and this and that. That's how the prey animal thinks. It's
Right.
all scared about everything in its environment. So now back in a business sense and back to courage, if something happens, the prey mentality is like, how is this going to hurt me? And the predator way of thinking is that, okay, this might hurt. I don't care. It's too thinking about like
Mhm.
the ultimate good of what their business
Mhm.
is, to care about whatever happens. And it thinks, it knows that, you know, it will get what it wants in the end. It doesn't, it does get injured, a predator animal, but it doesn't register as an injury.
That's
Whereas
right.
a prey is a victim all the time. It's just waiting to be a victim.
Yeah.
And in a business sense, this is like if something goes wrong, a predator will say, well, this is the part of the game. And a prey animal will say, well, look, this is more evidence for why I should give up.
That's right.
And I always thought of that as an interesting way of thinking about it, is that for me, something to
Mhm.
constantly remind myself with is that you can't be a prey animal in the game. You chose the game,
That's
so you
right.
can't be prey in it. You have to be on the attack.
Yeah,
And
we are.
any injury you take, you have to cop. It's like, this is a part of the game.
Mhm.
So that's like a nice way of thinking about it, I think.
That's the mentality that I like to hear. And that's the mentality that you got to go forward with in life in
Mm.
general. It's because
Yeah.
you either a prey or a predator. So, because things are going to come at you in life, and as I said before to you, in life, it doesn't matter what happens to you. It matters how you feel about what happens to you. So, if you're in a business and things go wrong, it doesn't matter the things went wrong in the business. This is going to make a big difference on your next move. What matters
Mm.
is how you feel about what went wrong and how can
Mm.
you cope with it. How can you
Mm.
chop change around? This is why you like we had people in COVID. Some
Mm-hmm.
business perished, some
Yeah.
business rearranged. So they thought about, okay, this has happened to us. Now what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Some business said, well, this has happened to me and I'm done.
Yeah.
They're the victim,
Yeah.
and the other ones,
Victims hate hearing that. Victims hate hearing that their level of suffering is up to them. They
yeah,
don't want to hear it.
yeah,
You know
that's
what I
true.
mean?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah, like it is the case because I've seen it within myself, and I'm no exception. That the difference between being a prey or being a victim is like any bad thing that pops up is hurts me, and being someone that when a bad thing happens, you
mm,
understand it's not good, but it doesn't register as a pain to you because
yeah,
you're just thinking about what's next. You're not really so. It's not like I became a different creature in between those. I'm the same person, but a victim will never want to hear that their level of suffering is up to them. They want to buy into the idea that all the pain they feel is completely not their responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's true because it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. What matters is how you feel about what just happened to me. That's what
Hmm.
makes the difference. So, and I've mentioned to you before, is anything in life that you're fearful of, you need to run toward, run through
Mm.
the ring of fire. Don't run from it,
Yeah.
because that once you run towards something that you are uncomfortable with or fearful of, and you conquer that, then you add that to your bag of tricks, because now you realize that, hold on, I was afraid of that. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I made it this big bad boogeyman, and then it ended up being nothing, or
Mm.
ended up being something that wasn't as devastating as I thought it would be. And that's usually the case. People have these ideas that, oh wow, I don't think I can go through that. I don't think I can handle that. But it's not about that. It's about how you think about what you're going through. When you have a
Mm.
setback in life, then you deal with it. You have to go from point A to point B. Now, the stuff in the middle is what makes the difference. How long are you going to stay in the middle? How long does it take for you to say, okay, I'm done with being a victim. I'm done with being with mediocrity. Let's move. Let's go in a different direction. Let's shift gears. But you have to get from point A to point B. So one of the tips is how quickly can I get from point A to point B? Well, that's a mindset thing.
Mm.
So when you understand that, okay, things are not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Mm.
For me to get off my backside and let's get up and run
Yeah.
and let's move with it. So it,
Mm.
this life, it's a lot about your philosophy and how you think. So as you get older, you start fine tuning your philosophy. You start realizing the things that you used to think was huge. You just think back when you were a little child, the thing you thought was huge, you went through and realized, oh well, it wasn't as big as bad as I thought. So as
Mm.
you get older, your perspectives change, your philosophy change, but it depends on what level. The people who have no fear of failing, well, most people have some fear, but they have a high degree of no fears of failing, are able to achieve more than someone who's afraid of everything.
Mm.
There's so many people that say, "Oh, don't do that because it's risky. Don't do that because it ain't gonna work, or you
Mm.
could fail." My
Yeah.
philosophy is, I'm gonna go give everything a go, and if I fail at it, I'm gonna learn something from it and move forward with it. So
Mm.
for me, there are no failures in life except for failing to try. And so that's why I put that on to you and to Dwayne, my other son, is that don't be afraid to have a crack. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid to have a go at life, because
Mm.
what's the worst thing can happen? The worst thing is that you can fail at it. But if it don't scar you and you're like, okay, well, I was bad at that. What did you learn? What
Mm.
did you learn about yourself? What did you learn
Yeah,
about the situation?
that's the maturity things, like
Mm-hmm.
learning about. I guess when you're younger, um, you don't know what really does hurt or doesn't. You don't have the life experience to know what's going to hurt you and what isn't. And then as you get older, you learn that a lot less actually hurts you than you think.
Mm.
There's so much, like you said before, when you were a young kid, or even more so in high school, things that seemed so important that if you didn't have it, was the end of the world. That just wasn't the case.
Mm.
Um, Even just like even down to things such as embarrassing moments. I was actually having a chat with my friends, and we were very happily and openly um, uh, talking about all the most embarrassing moments of our high school life and joking about it. And at some point, we thought it was the end of our lives. Like we thought, this is it. There's no point in all of our social status is gone, and it's that I find is that effect of knowing that what you think is going to hurt you doesn't hurt you as you get older and as you learn, that
Mm.
continues. So
Mm.
I'm looking forward to learning of the things that I'm worried about now. One day won't be so terrifying.
So that's a
Yeah.
classic example of what I just said. It doesn't matter what happens to you in life, it's how you feel about what happens to you. So at that point, you and your friend was thinking that this is the end of your life. That's how you felt about it.
Mm,
It didn't matter what happened to you, it's how you felt about it. And
hmm
that's what made the difference. So you have to take on these philosophies and learn that, hey, it doesn't matter what happens to me. It's how I feel about what's about to happen to me or what I've been through. So if you learn to work harder on yourself than you do on anything else, you get to understand these things about yourself and say, why am I worried about these things all the time when you've proven it over and over and over again in the past? The things you used to worry about didn't matter.
mm,
Because if you really think back on your past experiences, some of the things you worried about, it didn't really come to didn't rise to the surface, or if it did, it wasn't the end of the world like you thought it was going to be. So all this
yeah.
worrying and stuff is a bit of a waste of energy and waste of time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That goes back to the procrastination thing, or like when people have a business or a work thing that they want to try, all the little things take up so much attention. It's relates to that. I found the thing I was talking about. It's called the law of triviality, and another name for it is the bicycle shed fallacy. And what it says is that the arguments people have within an organization typically give disproportionate weight to trivial issues, meaning that most of the discussion and quabbling in a business or whatever it may be, but this also means in an internal sense, all the internal worries disproportionately are spent on insignificant issues.
yeah,
And I've seen this firsthand in many in big businesses and in little startups that I've been involved with other people and myself, that all the little issues are believed to be this big thing.
right,
And yeah, and also procrastination as well. One thing I learned about procrastination is that I thought the issue of procrastination was due to laziness, when in reality it was due to fear. And
mm,
it took a long time for me to realize those two things are interrelated, and they give the illusion of being the same thing. Laziness and fear seem like the same. Like a lot of your laziness is actually fears, like sitting on the couch doing nothing, when you had so much opportunity to do what you need to do, was
mm,
actually a symptom of a fear.
for sure.
And that took a long time for me to realize.
Mm,
And I can also now isolate it in my friends and help them through it. So a couple of friends have reported the same thing. It's like even some of my business partners, when I had some resistance on, there was a lot that needed to be done. Why wasn't it done? Luckily, I have very upfront and very self-aware friends, and they just said, "I think at the heart of it, I'm just scared or
Yeah.
fearful." And
Mm.
yeah, that was a big thing for, let's say, anyone who might be listening. If they because you can attach a lot of shame to being uh, um um what's the term, lazy. Like, if you
Mm.
feel like there wasn't enough that you did in the day, you can have so much shame.
Mm.
But the issue is that people might not be looking in the right area. They think it's a self-discipline issue, when really, and it might be, when really it's a fear issue,
Yeah.
that they need to work on their fears as opposed to their discipline. Because they'll find, maybe if they take apart that fear, they'll just work on whatever it is very happily.
Yeah. That's a
Mm,
classic. The fear is behind everything
mm,
to do with. As soon as you start dreaming and having aspiration and setting goals, the first thing that'll pop up is fear. And fear could be any number of things. It could be any number of fear that gets in the way. And you start chipping, and this is when I say, when you work hard on yourself, then you start chipping away at those fear factors. And then what happens, you have to put those fears right in front of you, and you have to run through that ring of fire, the fear fire. So in order to be a great entrepreneur, you have to work harder on yourself, because when you develop, your business and your ideas develop. But if you have fear in the way of that, and you 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 sort of glazing over that with planning. I'm over here planning. I'm preparing. I'm excited about the preparation of my business and plotting and scheming and strategizing. But you haven't addressed any fears. So you have to address the fears, get them out of the way. And this is where the great leaders and achievers are, have done that. They've identified their fears, and we all have them, and they learn to put them aside, conquer them, and get over it. Some people just will not um, get off their couch because of fear of what people around them you're, are telling you. If you have one thing for sure, if you someone who has a goal, and then you share it with someone who don't have the same mindset or philosophy as you, more than likely they're gonna knock that goal down. They're going to shoot it down and say, "Oh yeah, but you didn't think of this." Or yeah, yeah, but what about that? So in order to achieve your greatness, you got to figure out what's your fears and keep your goals and ambitions pretty much to yourself, unless you're around like-minded people.
mm,
Because anytime you share with someone who's not thinking or on the same wavelength as you, they're gonna come up with a negative thing about it, because everyone have they impose their fear factor into your goals and your dreams and aspirations, and that's a mistake you can avoid, but by keeping it to yourself. Um, so anytime you have goals, keep those goals to yourself unless you're around like-minded people. But one thing about fear, it's in all of us, so we have to identify what they are and then start chipping away at them, because fear is there to prevent you from achieving your greatness.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking on what you said about that. It's very true. Um, I personally would have a bit of a different approach with regard to, telling people about what you want to do, and then you do have the negative voices. I think it's actually a very good test about where you're at, and in knowing how much that affects you. Because I know people who want to do something, they tell people, they get shot down, and then they stop. So I think it's a good way of seeing where you're at. Because if you're able to say what you want to do openly, and then
Mm.
people kind of shoot you down, and you just say, yeah, you can say that, and then you continue on, I think it's a good test.
Well,
Um,
it's good to have conviction in what you do. but there is residual effects to that that you have to be aware of.
Mhm.
Just because if I approach you with an idea and you shoot it down and I say, well, that doesn't bother me, it may not
Mhm.
bother me at that moment. But what'll
Mhm.
happen is when your business starts to struggle and
Mhm.
things get to be hard, you will pull that conversation back up
Mhm.
that he said, she said, and
Mhm.
maybe they're right.
Yeah.
So
There's this. Yeah.
that's the thing you have to be aware of. You might think, okay, well, that doesn't matter what you think, which is great, but you have to be very careful that you actually are that kind of person. You are, like you said, that predator to the point
Yeah.
that that's a little ruffle in the bush. That's ruffling, and that bush didn't affect you. You waiting to pounce on that, but you don't want to have that effect where you moved on and later on you come through that same path again in that ruffle, and then it scares you. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I think this is one of the things that I said before about the courage thing. All right. About because I said something along the lines of you have to be willing to accept that anything that could go wrong will go wrong. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong, right? And but one of those things of like the worst case scenario might be that your haters get to laugh at you in the end and they get to be right, which is an awful thing no one wants to think about. And but it is true that people will make decisions so that doesn't happen. That they will it is true. Some people are very um prone to what people kind of say about them, and they're very prone to what the people who don't like them, or maybe even the people who like them,
mm,
um, say about them. And it could be the case that your enemies get the last laugh. But you try something, you get laughed at for it, and then the people who laugh at you are right. It could happen. And I
yeah,
think that's one of the areas where courage is needed to be able to understand that that might happen. That
yeah,
the people who are, scoffing at you, they might get the last laugh. And again, I think it is the people who are willing to endure that. Again, it's a separating thing there. The
mm,
people who are willing to do that are going to be stronger and have more character than the people who are unwilling to face that reality. Some people will determine the direction that their business goes in just so that, again, it's avoiding risk. It's avoiding risks, right? They'll determine the whole direction which the business goes in just so that their enemies won't laugh at them.
mm,
And I just think it's another area which you have to be aware of. And another thing which you have to face is how many of us will pick jobs, will pick university degrees, will pick friends to be around with, just so that people don't think that they're weird, or people don't think that they're foolish or gonna be poor, or just so that people don't laugh at them, or their enemies don't laugh at them, or their friends don't laugh at them. And it's like you can't use that as a barometer for your decision ever.
mm. No,
Um, yeah.
because that's a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
If you get motivated, some people operate like that where you get motivated when someone say you can't do something,
Mm-hmm.
and some people you just can't operate that way because that's a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have don't need that or look for that motivation when somebody say you can't. I'm more focused
Mm-hmm.
on me.
Yeah,
And
that's I could be wrong, but I actually think you had the opposite position a number of years ago. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it was you, maybe someone else. But it was something along the lines of like, I want you to tell me that I can't do it so that I can show you that you can. And that sounds really noble when you say it out loud. When you think about it, you're just dancing to the sound of their drum. Like
right,
you're just jumping to their beat. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like if they're saying like you're constructing your ambition and drive and action around what they're saying about you. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. So I think what you said is right. Is that like you got to be in your own lane, like what you
yeah,
just said.
yeah. You got to be too busy thinking about the bigger picture because when you set goals and dreams and stuff, aspirations, to and setting goals, you have to have something that's bigger than you. You have to have a why. And so that should be your focus on the why. Not when, okay, you have a why and somebody say, okay, well, your why is not going to work. Then you start to focus on why it won't work. So you have to have the why, and it has to be bigger than you. Because if I do something, if I'm setting goals and dreams, it's just about me. As soon as it gets hard, I run into an obstacle, it's almost easy for me to give up. But if it's bigger than me, if my why and my purpose is bigger than me, then I have a reason to keep pushing forward, keep pushing on. And when something or life say it's not going to work, even if I say it to myself, it's not going to work, I have to make it work because it's bigger than me. So that's another thing where if you're planning, plotting your moves, you have to start discovering, well, why? What is your why? What's your purpose
Mhm.
of doing this?
Yeah.
And if your why is just about you have to be careful because the thing has to be bigger than you in order.
Yeah.
This is just my opinion. It needs to be bigger than you. It can include you, but it needs to be bigger than just you on why you're trying to do what you're doing. That
Mm.
gives you a little bit of extra boost in energy. So when it gets time to get hard, you can keep moving forward. You can
Hmm.
have a little bit more motivation and determination because it's not
Yeah.
just about me. It's about all of this and that and everything else.
Mm.
So yeah, procrastination usually comes from fear.
Hmm.
Um, well, it's coming from fear, and you have to identify, well, what am I fearful of? Then you have
Mm.
to start breaking it down to how do I conquer it? What are the things I need to do to get through this fear factor because it's holding me back. So whatever that may be, you talk to a friend, talk to someone who can help you, or work it out within yourself. But you got to start identifying, why are you lacking? Why are you not moving? Why are you sitting still? And and it's usually because some fears is in the background and
Hmm.
is dragging you down. So that comes with courage, the courage to be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself when you are an entrepreneur. Or you got to learn to be honest with yourself. If you're lacking in skills, you need to be honest with yourself. If you lacking motivation, creativity, and you're frustrated all the time, you have to be honest with yourself and say, well, I'm lacking. What's the problem? Where's
Yeah.
the areas I need to improve on? If you're able to be honest with yourself, then you can sit it down, write it down, plan it out on what's going wrong, seek help, and that's another thing. When you're working on your own, you need to learn to build a good team around you who can assist you with your goals. Because if you're the only person making all the decision, what if you're not making the right decision? Right?
Mm.
So you have to
Yes.
have someone who can help guide you in the right direction. Because if you're the only ones making all these decisions and your decisions 1, 2, 3 are all wrong, then you're going backwards. You're not going forward. So that's another tip about learning and studying and becoming. When you study yourself, you soon discover that, wow, I got a lot of things I need to work on. But that's not a time to feel bad. That's a time to get excited. That's
Hmm.
what people have a different philosophy. I don't want to work on myself because I don't want to identify all my weaknesses because it'll make me sad or it'll make me um, it'll discourage me. But you have to flip that mindset. Say, well, everything that you discover about yourself, every weakness and skill set that you're lacking in, you now have done the first step in improving it, identifying that you have that weakness.
Mm.
Now, let's get excited because yesterday I didn't know that. Today I know it. So where are we going with this?
Mm.
We're going to seek advice, and this is how things work in life. You figure out how things work, and then you study it, then you become it. So
Yeah.
you want to set goals to achieve. You need to be that person it takes to achieve that goal. If you want to be a doctor, you have to set goals to become a doctor. What person is it going to take for me to be a doctor? Well, you got to do all this stuff. You got to learn all these skills. You got to go to school. You got to. So, what
Yeah.
skills do I need to be a doctor? But if you
Mm.
don't want to look at that and say, "No, I'm going to be a doctor," without studying and becoming, then you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe on there's one thing you mentioned in the past. Maybe we can end on this point. You said that often the risky decision is the safe decision, and the real risky decision. Sorry, the risky decision is no, sorry, it's the safe decision is actually the riskier decision. That the the option that seems more where you're running away from risk
Mhm.
overall in terms of your life is the riskier issue.
Mhm.
Do you remember that? Maybe you
Yeah.
could elaborate on that.
Well, it's also people make a more comfortable decision.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it.
and so when you make a comfortable position, you're not leaving your comfort zone. And if you don't leave your comfort zone, you're not being tested, or you're not going to be challenged, and you're not going to grow to where you need to grow. You're going to stay in that comfortable position. So when you're an entrepreneur, you got to always be in an uncomfortable position because you're constantly growing. Like when your bones are growing faster than it should, it aches, but you're growing faster. So you have to learn to leave your comfort zone. And I think what you point you were making, I said that if you make a safe decision and you don't get excited about that, you walk away feeling like a little bit lost and empty, then you have to know that that's the wrong decision.
Hmm.
So you have to learn to trust your intuition, your instinct. If you're making decision, you say, I don't know if this is the safest or the most or the smartest decision to make. But when you make that decision, you feel energized, you feel excited, or you feeling some type of enthusiasm towards that decision, then more likely you're on the right path to the
Mm.
right decision. But if you say you're a person who think I'm gonna make this, I gotta study and work this out. I want to make the smartest decision, and then you sit down and you work it out, and you go, I made the right decision here. Then more likely it's not the right decision. You just made a safe decision, so you're gonna stay in that little box that you're in, your little comfort zone.
Mm.
And I like this statement that I came across. A lady, my name Karen Samuelson, said, "Our greatest life is waiting for us at the exit ramp of our comfort zone. Our greatest life is waiting for us at the exit ramp of our comfort zone," meaning that you're you're gonna live your greatest life once you get out of that zone. And so many of us, because we have fears, we want to stay what we're comfortable doing. We want to stay right here. I'm good right here. I'm comfortable. But you're not growing. If you're just sitting on the couch watching TV, you're not growing. You may be growing outward, but you're not growing up. So you have to learn to study these things about yourself and say, am I living in my comfort zone? And if I am living in my comfort zone, then you have to identify this is the wrong place. This is the wrong place. Another thing, like I said, we're going to end it with this, but um, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions all the time when you're trying to grow. Like if you're going
Mm.
to seminars or something like that, and you say, "Well, I'm going to go to this seminar because I think I'm smarter than these people." So, what are you going to learn? You have to go get in an arena that people who are smarter than you, that you push you out of your comfort zone, so you walk in there, you're intimidated. Like I don't know anything about this. That's where you want to be, because when you go in there, you're going to learn something from some of the great minds. You're in an uncomfortable zone, and when you walk out of there, you're gonna come out of there wiser and stronger. And that's what you want to be doing all the time. Speaking to people who are smarter than you, being around people who are smarter than you. Don't run away from that. Run into the ring of fire of being
Mm.
uncomfortable. And that's my message to you is learn to leave your comfort zone, learn to run through the ring of fire, study yourself, study life, learn your values, and become what you want to become. So um, these are the things, as you work harder and harder on yourself, you start to identify your weaknesses, your skill set, your mindset, how things affect you, your growth patterns. But if you don't work on those things, you can get bamboozled with other things. Fear will come on top of you, and you won't grow as quick as you should.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. Hence why courage is needed.
Yes, this is why courage is needed. You have to work on your courage and be willing to fall on that sword. And that's a courageous person who can fall on that sword. And it's hard to put that sword to the chest and be honest. That's the being honest part. When you put the sword to the chest, it's no turning back. Am I going to be honest with myself here? Am I going to keep doing what I'm doing? Keep procrastinating? Keep lying to myself? You got to be honest with yourself. Every one of us has weaknesses. Every one of us have things to work on. So in order to do that, you got to be honest with yourself and then fall on that sword and say, well, I need help. I need guidance. I need direction. I need to rethink the way I'm thinking, redo some things. So that's what I believe in. And it's a great topic to talk about. Procrastination, having courage to conquer procrastination. And courage is deep. It comes in many different shapes and form. But courageous people achieve great things. And nothing more important than conquering yourself. So that's why you have to work hard on yourself, and everything else will work out. You'll find yourself more happy when you put a lot of work on yourself, because you got clarity. And as you get more clarity, you have more sense of who you are and what really matters, and what something happens to me, how I'm going to cope with that. You learn to understand that, just because someone says something over here, I don't have to react over there. You get more wiser and more hip to what the world is all about. And that's what it's about, learning how the world works, study it, and become
Mm.
it. That we're in our podcast on that note. And if you like what you're listening to, subscribe to Old Head Podcast. So thank you, Malik.
No worries. Glad to be a part of it.
We'll meet again and we'll do it again. See you on the next topic.
Awesome.